Welcome to the Write the Damn Book Already podcast. My name is Elizabeth Lyons. I'm a 5-time author, and I teach people how to write and publish powerful, thought-provoking nonfiction and memoir without overthinking or getting caught up in extreme overwhelm. Because your story and message matter, and it's about to become someone's very favorite resource. For more book writing, publishing, and how the heck do I move through this glitch tips and solutions, and plenty of free resources, visit publishaprofitableBook.com. Hello, and welcome to this next episode of Write the Damn Book Already. I actually woke up this morning for the first time in quite some time, ready to just pounce out of my bed. It doesn't normally happen like that. I know I've been listening to different gurus and people for years who are like, you should be so passionate about what you do that when your eyes pop open in the morning, it's almost like you just levitate out of your bed with excitement. I don't think that really ever, it almost never happens to me. When it happens to me is when I choose to check email before getting out of my bed. Another thing that I sometimes do that they say you shouldn't do, but I occasionally do it. And there will be an email from someone that says, I can't log into my portal. Maybe they're in Book Writing Made Simple or Publish a Profitable Book, and they're like, I can't log in. That will get me pouncing out of bed immediately. But very few other things do. This morning, however, I woke up and the first thing I thought was, oh my God, I get to talk to Linda Sivertsen today. I found Linda maybe a month ago, and I don't even remember exactly how. I think it was by way of Laura Belgray and Zibby Owens and maybe somebody else. I don't know. Somebody tagged somebody who tagged Linda. And I found her and I went down the rabbit hole as I do. Like admittedly, when I find someone and I'm intrigued by them, I'm fascinated, I'm interested, I just go down the rabbit hole. And then I'm that girl who they talk about in sitcoms who will like your photo from 2010 and make it clear that I've been scrolling through your whole feed for years and years and years. And I'm like, how do I unlike this? Because when I message this person and ask them if they'd like to come on my podcast, they're already scared of me. Luckily, that didn't happen with Linda. And thankfully, she agreed to come and chat with me about her newest book, Beautiful Writers, as well as her lengthy career in this industry, her experience as a ghostwriter, as a writing coach, as a book mama, as she's come to be known as. And she's just such a wealth of information when it comes to not just the tactical process of writing a book, but what goes on in our brains and why that happens. And being really honest about the fact that so many people do these kinds of mental gymnastics after they decide to write a book. And so many people get a great idea and they get really motivated and they invest a lot of time and sometimes money, and then life takes a turn or they just lose interest for a second or whatever happens. And I love having these conversations with people who are so truly engrossed in the book writing industry because it really lends so much validation to what so many people go through and think, I'm the only one who's going through this, so clearly I'm not meant to do this. And it couldn't be further from the truth. Once we realize how many other people are sharing in our angst, and can you tell angst is one of my favorite? If you've listened to the last several episodes, you're probably like, Elizabeth, stop saying angst. And I won't anytime soon, but then I will when it's replaced with a new word. But the angst that is felt when, we think we're the only one. And we think there's something wrong with us because we can't get something done or something isn't feeling right or we're not sure why something isn't lining up properly and we don't even know who to ask for guidance. So I know you're going to absolutely love this episode as much as I did, and you're going to love Linda as much as I do. So let's just get to it. Beautiful Writers. As I mentioned last week, I think on an Instagram live, I was terrified to buy this book. Terrified. And I said why, but I'll just say again, I had a book, my book came out last week. And it's
congratulations.
Same topic. Thank you.
Yeah.
Same topic, same sort of intention, I think.
Yeah.
And I was so afraid because I thought, I'm going to get Linda's book and be like, stop. Like, we're not publishing. It's not happening. My book sucks.
God bless you.
Oh my God. And that's not at all what happened. I mean, it did for like a hot second, but here's the thing. Your book is this is why I love books, because there, as you and I both know, there are thousands of books out there on how to write a book.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Right?
Endless.
And what your book validated, reminded, proved, whatever word you want to use, to me is that it's about is someone else's voice.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And someone else's approach. And I'm so curious, the thing about your book that strikes me so much, and I'm not through it yet because I'm kind of savoring it.
Yeah. Thank you.
First of all, it's big.
It's monster.
It's, as I call it's a BMF, but in a good way. Like, I'm like, man, I'm just going to savor this for a while. What I've gleaned so far that I love so much is that you have the how, but it's like, there's so much memoir in there.
Yeah. Well, what it is, I wanted to do 2 books in one. I wanted to do a full writing memoir, my kind of struggling, clawing my way to the middle, coming of career memoir about all the stuff that the big authors you adore don't tell you. I wanted to know, what is it like when they can't afford a Subway sandwich? Or, what are they doing when their family, the husband wants to divorce them and the kids want to throw rocks at their head because all they're doing is sitting there trying to master this freaking creative craft. What the hell do you do?
What do you do?
And I felt like I had such outrageous stories, and they were so bizarre and they were so fun and self-deprecating. And they were the stories that my friends just laughed their asses off at. And I thought, I want to tell that story. But then at the same time, I had this podcast with these world famous authors, and I was getting thousands of pages of transcripts of their funny, great, practical stories. And I thought, how can I weave them together and do 2 things? And really, that was a double book. And so when I went to shop it, publishers said to me, we'll keep it like 80 to 100,000 words. And I said, nope, not happening. I mean, the memoir alone was 80,000 words. So, my argument was, I said to my eventual publisher, who fought me until the very end, and then just
really,
and then was like, okay, whatever, you can have it. Actually, what they did was they saw the full thing and they ended up loving it. It's such a validation to any of us creatives who have a vision to just really, really fight for your vision, because I think it does work the way I did it. But it was scary because it is expensive. The more pages you put into a book, the more expensive it is. And I just held to my guns, and I'm so glad I did. I just think it's a fun romp.
I'm so glad you did. And it's not easy to combine 2 books. It's not. In fact, that's an understatement. Yeah. And it's done so well.
Thank you.
So well. And I love, you have this approach of kind of introducing a topic at a very macro level, and then diving into your experience. It's so experiential reading your book, because there are books out there, many of them, and there are TV shows. And this is what makes something really successful, in my opinion, is when you're in it and you don't even realize you're in it.
Yeah.
So it's not laid out like, here's the macro. Now I'm going to tell you a story. Now I'm going to give you some lessons. It just happens. Mm-hmm. And then interspersed with that are, as you said, all these great tips and tidbits from celebrities and famous writers, et cetera, whether it's about writing or about their craft in general, right, that we wouldn't know unless they were brave enough to admit it. Yeah. And I think that's one of the greatest challenges that creatives have, is that we think we're the only one. Like, we think Tom Hanks had it easier somehow. We think Cheryl Strayed had it easier somehow.
Right.
Like, there's something special about them. And of course there is, but it's not what we think. Right.
What's most special about them is their perseverance, is their ability to just block out any negativity and just keep going.
Well, and that's the thing that I think people don't realize is the backstory behind I mean, Marie Forleo is I know you are close with her, and I've followed her since back when she was in her tiny 500 maybe square foot New York City apartment, making videos on it wasn't even a laptop, right? Her apartment was dark. She had like 2 jobs, bartending, right?
Amazing.
And I think to myself, I knew that Marie, but most people don't. Most people see her with her studio, Marie TV and the studio and the staff and the thing, and they think that happened overnight.
Right.
And that was one of the first sort of backstories that I won't say I was fascinated with it, because I thought, how many people who follow her today know that that's how it not only started, but it went that way for a while. And without that belief in what you're doing and that passion for it and willingness to keep going, despite other people saying, this is stupid.
Oh, totally.
This is never going to work. Totally. Go get a real job. Most of us would quit.
Well, and a lot of the people closest to us are the ones who say that get a real job thing. I mean, my ex-husband was like, he was very supportive at first because I was on such fire. And I think a lot of us get a lot of support in the very beginning because people can see how our eyes light up and how excited we are and how we have Herculean energy. Suddenly we can wake up early and go to bed late. But boy, when you get into that messy middle in your life and in your manuscript, and shit is going wrong and people are feeling forsaken and it's harder and harder to pay the bills, that's when people like my ex-husband look at me and go, get a fucking job. I mean, God, I mean, he said it to me at the very beginning, which made me start another business, a dog walking business that led to the writing. But boy, that get a fucking job is a real common one. And it's a balancing act for everyone, which is why I loved interviewing so many people, because I was able to say, like, okay, Joy Harjo, poet laureate of the United States, how did you pay your bills? Or Cheryl Strayed, how did you pay your bills? That to me is so interesting.
Yes. And the fact that so many people think, again, there's something wrong with them because they're not making it work without recognizing that they're just following in the footsteps that, they're making their own footsteps, but they're following the same path as someone who they admire and revere and want to, get. So when you get stuck, when you're writing, what do you do?
Oh, I get support. I have a mentor, Betsy Rappaport, who I've worked with her not on every book, but on most of my books because I think we're all too close to our own stuff. It's so hard to be objective about our own lives and our own stories. And so I'll run things by her and say, what do you think about this? I'll send her chapters and she'll send them back to me and with suggestions and editorial, notes. And I go to my sister, who's freaking brutal. My sister's so hard to please. She has way more writing courses under her belt than I do. I teach. She went. Like, she was the student for 10 years going to the writing courses. And that wasn't me. I was out there writing and learning the hard way. And then, getting a whole lot of mentoring from my mentor, who was a big editor at Times Books and Random House for a long time. So I got the mentorship, but my sister got it through classes. And oh boy, I mean, she's so hardcore. She's like, Linda, I was there and I'm your sister and I don't give a crap, so you better edit this story because if I'm not interested, who's going to be? And I'm like, okay, here we go.
Yeah. And, there's this place where I'm curious if you ever had a moment in any of your books, but specifically Beautiful Writers, where you thought, does anybody even care? Is anybody going to care? Really?
No, I'm very committed to my vision. When I have a vision, I know that it's good. I'm sorry. I think that probably sounds arrogant, but I don't have a lot of visions. I'll be given a dream of a book or a waking vision of a book, both for my clients and for myself. And I see it as if it's real. And I know that it's meant to be in the world. And where that's really hard, and maybe this happens to you too, is when I have a vision for a client and it's so real and I can see it and they can't hold it. Like I see something that scares them or it's too feels too big for them and they can't hold it. And I just have to let it go. I have to go, Linda, this is not your destiny. This is not your karma. This is their destiny. And they know better for them but when I have that vision for myself, oh, forget it. I'm dogged. I will birth it into being if it takes me 15 years, like this book did. And it doesn't mean I don't change it. I mean, this book had many iterations.
Was it 15 years?
Some of the stories were 15 years in the making. They were for a different book. They were from a divorce memoir. So, some of these stories I've been carrying around for so long and reworking, but never, ever did I doubt that it would be worthy.
What a gift that is, really, because there's a story. I can't, you're probably going to remember, obviously, but I can't remember right now who it is in the book who talked about inspiration and how, I think it was a woman, she just has to wait for inspiration.
I think that was Danielle Laporte. She said, angels have to appear in my studio.
Yes, that's what it was. And I loved it because I am the exact opposite. If I wait for inspiration, it's never going to happen. That doesn't mean that I don't get inspiration and that inspiration doesn't get me sitting down and writing for an extended period of time. That absolutely happens. Yeah. But if I wait for it, if I use that, for me, that's a procrastination tool. And for many of the authors with whom I work, it's a procrastination tool. And yet it was brilliant to see that for someone, it's not that is their truth and their reality. And I hear so much what you're saying about other people and holding, if they can't hold it. And it is extremely challenging.
Oh, yeah.
How long have you been working with writer? How long have you been doing your writing retreats?
I started them when my husband bailed. I was married for 19 years and he left for another gal. And I crawled on my hands and knees to start working with people because at that time I was a ghostwriter. So I had my own books, but I was really making most of my money through ghostwriting. And it was brutal work. I mean, really time intensive. And you can only work with one person or two people. Sometimes I would do 2 books at a time, but that was just really impossible on my eyeballs. And I thought, what if I could help 5 people at a time? What if I just had this sense, and I was teaching my first ever book proposal. Like it was the precursor to what Danielle Laporte and I wrote together, which was Your Big, Beautiful Book Plan, which followed something I started called, I don't even remember, Successful Book Proposals or something. And now there's like a book proposal magic course. But before all that, I had this little thing I was teaching people with. And I thought, well, what if I did a little retreat in my house, kind of like what's it called? A telecourse. So I did a telecourse and I'm on with the guy who was, you have 60 people on a call in 2008. Who knows how to do that, right? So there was this guy who was running the call and he said to me, you need to do retreats. There's a certain percentage of people that will want to work with you live. And I was like, how do you do that? And he goes, well, don't worry. You can borrow my house. I have a retreat house in Breckenridge, Colorado. You can borrow my house. I mean, it was just the most bizarre thing. And he said, announce it on the second call of your telecourse and charge $5,000. And I was like, I can't charge $5,000. I mean, at this point, my house was in foreclosure. It was the housing crisis, right? So I'm losing my house. My husband has got this new gal. My kid is suicidal, my 17-year-old son. And I'm like, that sounds like highway robbery. I cannot do that to people. And he goes, don't be ridiculous. Try it. So I'm on the call, the second call. And I say, okay, guys. And he said, they'll sign up before your call is over. And I was like, oh, he's crackers. But I thought, what if I got to lose? I'm already losing everything.
Right.
So I said, so I announced it to the call. And by the time I hung up, I had 5 people signed up.
That's amazing.
And the house in Breckenridge was floating. I felt like I had never been so happy or creatively fulfilled in my entire life. And then I just moved them to Carmel because that's my favorite place on earth. Yeah. And that was that.
So when people get to that retreat, is there still sometimes a person who comes and then can't hold the vision?
Oh my gosh, yes.
Okay.
Usually what it is they come with several ideas. So they've got, creative people are channels. We're all just getting information all day long. And so they come a lot of times to just sort out, what do I do? I've got 7 book ideas. I've got 20 journals. I've got 900 blog posts. Like, tell me what the hell. And so I will look at their eyes, me and the rest of the group, the 4 other women there, because there's always just 6 of us total. You got to keep them small. And we will see, I'll ask questions and we will see her eyes light up or not. And we'll figure out really quickly, like the game plan of where she should start and the shortest distance between where she is and where she wants to be. And then I'll watch throughout the retreat. If they start to lose the belief or the confidence, sometimes the private sessions with me are just to cry about their mom. I mean, it just depends. We all have different blocks for different reasons at different times. So I've gotten really good at helping them figure out the book that they can hold on to, right? Some feel too big, some feel too scary. And once they go home, I can't say what's going to happen. Sometimes they get married and have kids and they put it on the back burner for 5 years, 10 years.
Absolutely.
But mostly I think I've gotten really good at helping people stay with the book that they can hold.
When one of the things I found, you said sometimes the book is too big, sometimes it's too scary. I find too, sometimes it's too small. And what I mean by that is that it's a should book, what I call a should book. So they come in thinking like, well, I should write about this, that, or the other thing, because that's what I do professionally. So I have someone I'm working with right now who felt that way. Like, I should write about this. But then in the end, after many weeks, the comment was, what I really want to write about is anxiety and managing anxiety. But I don't feel like that makes sense because it's not, so often we're kind of sold this idea that the book is the new business card and you have to keep it all in alignment, right? And so as we stifle that creative side that wants to say, like our spirit wants to say something, it wants to share something, and maybe it's not in line. And so that book that we think we should write is almost too small and it doesn't hold our interest.
Right. Oh, that's so true. If you're not obsessed with your topic, don't do it. Yeah. You're never going to have the energy to carry it through, or you're going to publish it. It's not going to go anywhere because you're not really behind it. Your energy is just detached.
That's another thing that I think is so interesting. When I launched my latest, I had the most relaxed, lovely book launch I've ever had.
Oh.
And I'll tell you why though. It's not because it just shot up and, millions of copies were out the door. That's not it at all. It was the last book I launched before this was 4 or 5 years ago. And I wasn't full-time coaching yet. And I was admittedly wrapped up in the whole, I'm going to be judged based on what number I hit on the lists, like specifically the Amazon list. And so I pushed and pushed and pushed. And the pressure of it wasn't so much the push of it, because I had a process to do it, but it was like the effect on my nervous system of, am I going to get there? Am I going to get there? Am I going to get there? Am I going to stay there? Was too much. And so with this one, I said, you know what? I'm in this forever.
Yeah,
this
totally.
is my passion. Like, I don't want this to go number 1 and then number 6,772. Like, I don't want that. They're not and no judgment, right? Because there are plenty of people, and I work with plenty of people who are like, I want that number. It's the same thing as I want it in a bookstore. I just want to see it there.
Yeah.
But to your point, even if you write and I'm putting air quotes here, best book on the planet, if you as the author are not so passionate about it that you can continue to talk about it, sell it, whatever word you want to use. I mean, you're selling it just by talking about it if you're passionate about it.
Totally.
If you can't do that, the book will go nowhere.
Yeah. Well,
right?
and that's the misconception, is that if you write a book, the world will find it. Like, what is build it and they will come.
Yeah.
And I've talked to a lot of people who wrote a book, and it didn't do much for like a year and a half. And then it hit the lists. And I said, well, what did you do? And they did this. They did a podcast every day, or they did social media constantly and blogging and guest articles and on and on and on. Or they hired a publicist and they got on TV shows. There are so many different ways to put yourself out there, but you have to find that place that you're comfortable.
Yeah.
I'm super comfortable doing this. I love being home. I'm a homebody. I have a million animals. I don't leave my house. Like, I leave my house as, inconsistently as possible. And so you have to know who you are and know what lights you up and what makes you happy and what's going to get you out there. And, selling books from the back of my car, going bookstore to bookstore, has never been my deal. It's just never. It's why I became a ghostwriter. Because when I first published, which was 1998, I had things in other people's books, but my first book was in 1998. And after that, I was on the talk shows, and my friend said to me, "You're at the top of Amazon." I didn't even know what that was because Amazon had just started. But I had a real choice to make. It was like I'd gone as far as I could go. I had done, all the things, CNN, Extra, talk shows, whatever. And the book had done really well. But it was like at that place where it had kind of sold out in all the stores. The second printing wasn't out yet. There was a big lag time. This was really pre anything social media or really heavy internet use. So it was like the only thing I could do at that point. And everyone told me, all the big authors told me, put the books in the back of your car and go. Just go on tour. And I was like, hell the F no. Like, that is not me. I have 9 million animals. I have a little kid. Like, I'm not going to do that.
So then Brene Brown and go into the shopping centers with the trunk full, which people don't realize she did that. I mean,
so many authors do that. And it was like, nope, don't have it in me. And so I thought, well, how can I keep writing and making money as a writer? So I went into ghostwriting, and it was it was amazing. It was the best training ever. Did it slow down my own books? Hell yes. I mean, I didn't do my own next book until I did with books, Linda Sivertsen and stuff. And some of those were really successful, but I didn't do my own book until 2008 with Generation Green. And that was because I got kind of stuck being a ghostwriter. It's a great gig if you can write all day with like your dog's asleep at your feet and the cat's on the desk. Sorry,
I'm the exact same way. And I remember, because my first book was in 2004, and no Amazon, no social media, none of that stuff. Yeah. I mean, Amazon may have barely existed, but
it existed, but it was like nothing like it is today.
Right. It was not today's Amazon. And so, I was doing radio and
me too.
It's almost like you and I and people who were publishing back then, we see how, I don't want to say lucky, but kind of is. If you're an introvert, there's so many creative ways now that you can get your message out without ever having to get out of your pajamas if you don't want to.
Yeah,
I mean, the pandemic was hard, but I've been preparing for a pandemic my whole life. Like I was like, I don't have to go anywhere. I'm not allowed to go anywhere.
Me too.
Right. Yeah. So are you familiar with human design?
I am, but I don't know much about it.
Do you know what you are?
I don't remember. I know. Okay. Somebody told me, but I don't remember.
Okay. It's fine. I was just curious if you had a 2, because I'm a manifesting generator and I'm a 6/2. So the 2 is like the hermit. Oh. But the 6 is kind of wants to get a message out and wants to lead and all those things. So I have this.
Oh, that's so me. That's ridiculous. Yeah.
It's crazy because, I'll have a day where I'm like, oh, a tour sounds really fun. But then the day before, if I were to do it, and I'm smart enough now and self-aware, I should say I'm self-aware enough now to know, Elizabeth, don't plan the tour. You're not going to want to do it. Because the day before I'd be like, I don't want to go. I'm not feeling well.
I didn't plan one for this book. I was just like, I knew I couldn't do it. I knew it was like, I would want to come home on the second day. There was too much going on here. We had We have puppies. We have a horse on the way.
So
Like
you
there
have
was
all the things.
just too much going on. Yeah. Not
Yeah.
going to do
I
it.
mean, I can't even, because on social media, we can see all the horses and
Oh my
all the
gosh.
everything. It's like, I would never leave that either.
Right. It's
I
just
have
too
one
much.
dog and I'm like, I
Yeah.
don't,
Yeah. I would
Yeah.
do, I love going to LA or something for events, for specific things. Of course. My God, what a blessing and what a gift.
Sure.
Yeah. It's just,
Intimate events and things where you feel connected. I think that's for me, what drives me is connection. If I feel like I'm just out pounding the pavement in order to, the word sales, like I have a visceral reaction.
Do you?
I do. I don't think of it if I think of it that way, I won't do it.
Yeah.
If I think of it as just making connections with people and having conversations and the end result is the end result,
it's so fun.
right? That's just fun.
Yeah.
So I'm curious about your perspective. I loved listening to your interview with Hal Elrod.
Oh, I love him.
Right. It was so good. I think that was right after I discovered you, as I like to say. I was like so elated to find you. I couldn't even see straight. And so you had this interview. I think, were you on his podcast or?
I was on his. I've actually, because he's a client and because he's sold 3 million books self-published, I'm doing a self-published episode, which I've never done for the Beautiful Writers podcast, with he and a couple of other clients I've had who've hit it really big self-published. So that's coming up. So I've interviewed him, but nobody's heard it yet.
Well, that's what I wanted to ask you about, if you're willing to share your thoughts on it or in advance, just a little bit in advance of that podcast, because what you had shared on his podcast that I thought was so interesting is that he was impatient. You were working with him on the proposal for Miracle Morning. Yeah. He got impatient, which I was like, okay, Hal and I, same person. Yeah. He said, forget this. I've figured out that all I need is a cover, a formatter, a this, or that. I can get those things on my own. So he went and he did it. But your thought before, of course, it hit 3 million copies. I think your exact words were, oh my God, this is the kiss of death. You want to
I thought he was crazy. Like, what the hell are you doing? At that point, when he came to me, I had already helped write and sell a lot of proposals. Many 6-figure, 1 7-figure. Like, to me, book proposals were the magic elixir. And who in their right mind would not do that? Like, I was sending him to agents, big agent friends of mine. I was positive we'd get a killer book deal. And he'd have, he'd be on his way to a New York Times bestselling, award-winning book. And all I did was send it to 2 agents, and they both passed. And he's like, I'm done. I'm out. I'm like, what the hell? I got a lot more. Are you crazy? And he fell off my radar for a while, and I just got busy, and he was busy, and I had no idea it was turning into this juggernaut, huge worldwide movement. Yeah. But he was right. And he made a lot more money doing it his way. But that's tricky because you don't know. Most people don't have the stamina or the know-how or the ability to write a self-published book and to really kick ass with it. That's a hard thing to do. And people say all day long, publishers don't do anything anymore and we don't need them. They're just printers. And I call BS on that, because when I did Generation Green with Simon & Schuster, I was in the fetal position. My husband had just bailed. I was not doing anything to help myself. I mean, I think I got 1 interview for myself on CNN, but basically every day I woke up, my publicist at Simon & Schuster was like, hey, Linda, so exciting. Tomorrow, Tosh, my son, he's going to be in Teen Vogue. And, I'd wake up the next day. So 17 magazine is doing a big thing on the book, or Family Circle, or blah. It was constant. And I did nothing but barely drag myself to the phone for the interviews. So publishers can be incredibly helpful.
And I think it's interesting because now, like, we just hear so many different things, and you can talk to a large group of people who are all published in different ways. Yeah. And some of them have incredible experiences being traditionally published. Yeah. Some of them, I was talking to Annabelle Monahan, who wrote Nora Goes Off Script, and she's had a great experience with her team. She's had a great experience with her editor, her marketing team, the whole thing. And then I talked to other people who will remain nameless, who are like, this is not at all what I signed up for. Maybe there's been turnover at the publishing house, or the editor that they had left and now they have a new editor and they're miserable, or they were promised all these things and then it didn't happen because they're not expected to sell a lot of books. So the publisher isn't putting a lot into them. So there is no, I think what's challenging for authors who are at the stage of what do I do next when it comes to publishing is that it could all, like, there is no one, air quote, right.
There's no one way. I think, I always say to people, it's really a God call. You have to tune in and figure out what is your path. What's your right path? Because there's no one way. I mean, that's one thing all of the celebrity authors that I've interviewed for the podcast and then put into the book, they show you constantly there's no one way. I mean, Stephen Pressfield outlines all of his books with this full scat method all on one sheet of paper. And then other people are like, outline? Are you effing kidding me? I would die. I would be constricted. I could never, ever be creative if I had an outline. So it's just, I mean, Dean Koontz, who sold 500 million books. Right. He doesn't even get up hardly at all during the day. He writes from 7 a.m. to dinner time. I mean, and doesn't hardly get up because to him, that fictional world becomes so much more real if he can sit in that. Well, Danny Shapiro has a couple of friends, couple of clients who wrote whole novels in 15 minutes a day or an hour a day before they went off and did a huge job. So we just all do what we can. Absolutely. And there's no one way. So with publishers, you just have to go with where your heart is, but also where life is showing you to go. So I always tell people, write your book proposal. You need the book proposal anyway, because it's going to get you so clear about what your marketing angles are and your hooks. And it's going to force you to do that really kind of mental gymnastics of figuring out, like, how do you sell yourself? What's your elevator speech? But all of that stuff that goes in the book proposal, even if you decide later to self-publish, let's say you don't get the agent you want, or you don't get the publishing deal that you want. So you do self-publish. Well, then all of that hard marketing work you're now going to have to pull out of is all done. You did it already. And let's say it works. Let's say you write the book proposal and you get a great agent, you get a great book deal, like, hallelujah. Then you have a partner in this game and you don't have to learn all that stuff on your own if you don't want to.
Well, and the thing about the proposal and the contents of the proposal is people underestimate how important it is, whether or not you're going after an agent, to know what's your core message, what's your elevator pitch, who's your target audience, how are you going to sell this thing? I mean, if you don't know those things and think about those things before you start writing, you are, for the most part, just kind of all over the place. Now, are there people who just have it in their head and they can sit down? Yes. But for the most part, in my experience, there's such a breadth of information.
Oh God, yes.
Heads, that they have to get clear. What is this book? Right. And whether or not you're selling it, even if you're not trying to sell it to an agent or an editor, you've got to be able to sell it to your reader.
Oh, hell yes.
Right. Like a reader has to be able to know from the jump, this is for me. This is what I'm looking for. This sounds intriguing, whether it's fiction, nonfiction, poetry, manga, like, I don't care what you're.
Yeah. And so much of what you learn when you're writing your first book proposal informs how you finish the book. I mean, the marketing is not separate from the actual text of the book in a lot of places. So you might be coming up with an idea that is great for the marketing of the book that makes you go, oh, well, if I put this line in here, if I put this idea in the actual chapter, they'll feed off each other in so much more seamless, beautiful way. And so the two help each other.
And I think people think lots of times of the proposal or the pre-work in the same way that they think of the outline, which is, this is not sexy. And it's not, in my opinion, it's not. but it makes not just the final product, but the work you do on the final product, it makes that even sexier.
Yeah.
Than it would be if you just sat down and said, well, I'm just going to start writing. I mean, you can do that and you can feel as though I'm writing, I'm doing the thing. It probably won't be long before you're like, oh my God, I have 17 pages. Where does this all, where is this going?
Right.
And how do I get it wrapped up with some sort of a bow here?
Yeah.
What is your prevailing wisdom or advice when someone says, I've always wanted to write a book, but I don't know. I don't know what to do. I don't know where to start.
Oh gosh. That's a hard one. I mean, the easy answer is you just have to start. Ass in chair, fingers on keyboard, just start. And then you'll know if you have something that really excites you. And a common thing I say is go where the juice is. Don't start with the stuff that's hard or that scares you or makes you want to run from your desk. You certainly have to get to that stuff, but start with the stuff that excites you and lights you up and makes you want to sit there. I think trust yourself. If you have that ache, you have what it takes, and trust the desire. I think that's all we ever need is to trust the desire and then go for it.
And then go for it. Yeah.
And you'll get breadcrumbs. You'll get messages along the way about where to go. You'll hear, buy this book proposal course or go to that class or read this book. You'll hear.
Or there'll just be a post you see on Instagram that like makes you think, of content that you want to write or something you want to say or something you disagree with. The prompts are everywhere. The messages are everywhere. It's just whether or not you're open to recognizing them. Yeah.
Brene Brown told me that on the podcast. She was like, she gets messages from billboards. She gets messages from Law and Order. Yeah. Like if you're truly wondering something, just pay attention to the messages you're getting and you'll get your answers.
That's why I justify my obsession with Netflix and all streaming services. It's like, there's something for me here. I'm sure of it.
Oh my God. My son and I watched 3 episodes of Emily in Paris last night. So good.
It's so good. I know. I won't tell you how fast I watched the whole last season, but it was very quick because I was sure there was something there for me.
Of course. Of course.
What's the best place for people to find you? Where are you most active?
Bookmama.com, mama.com. I think Instagram, Linda_Sivertsen, but find me through Bookmama because my name's impossible to spell. Nobody can do it.
I figured it out very quickly. I'll link all of that in the show notes. Thank you.
So much fun and good luck. I'm so excited for you, but I can't wait I ordered your book. I have it. I can't wait to dig in.
Yeah, you as well. I can't wait to keep salivating over this thing.
You'll be surprised by the ending. There's some twists and turns in the end. The memoir stuff gets pretty juicy and pretty funny.
I love it. I love it. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you enjoyed this episode, this is your friendly reminder to follow or subscribe, leave a quick review, and share it with someone you know has a great story or message, but isn't sure what to do next. Also, remember to check out publishaprofitablebook.com for book writing resources and tips, and to see all the ways we can work together to get your book out into the world. Again, thanks so much for listening, and I'll talk with you again soon.